What would you do with an abandoned brick power station sitting in the heart of one of Europe's most culturally rich cities? A hulking industrial relic that's too historically significant to demolish but too obsolete to use as intended. Most architects might propose a straightforward renovation, perhaps adding some glass and steel to signal modernity, but Herzog de Meuron, the Swiss duo known for transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary, looked at this 1899 electrical station in Madrid and saw an opportunity to literally defy gravity. Completed in 2008, CaixaForum Madrid doesn't just sit on its site, it hovers above it, creating a covered public plaza beneath a mass of oxidized cast iron that appears to float impossibly in mid-air. While next door, a vertical garden designed by botanist Patrick Blanc cascades down an adjacent wall like a living waterfall of green in the middle of urban Madrid. This isn't your typical adaptive reuse project where old meets new in polite coexistence. This is architecture as magic trick, as urban acupuncture, as a bold statement about how cultural institutions can simultaneously honor industrial heritage and create something entirely unprecedented. To understand why CaixaForum Madrid matters, we need to explore not just what Herzog de Meuron built, but how they fundamentally reimagined what a museum could be, how a building could relate to its city, and how architecture could transform a forgotten corner of Madrid into one of the capital's most dynamic cultural destinations, all while working within the constraints of a protected historical structure. Let's begin with the site and its history, because the story of CaixaForum Madrid is fundamentally a story of transformation and urban renewal. The building that would become CaixaForum began its life in 1899 as the Mediodía Power Station, designed by architect Jesus Carrasco y Encina to provide electricity to the rapidly industrializing Madrid. Constructed in red brick with a utilitarian industrial aesthetic typical of late 19th century power infrastructure, the station operated for decades before falling into obsolescence as the city's electrical needs outgrew its capacity and newer, more efficient facilities were built elsewhere. By the late 20th century, the power station sat abandoned, a brooding reminder of Madrid's industrial past. Located on Paseo del Prado, one of the city's most important cultural corridors, positioned between the Prado Museum, the Reina Sofia Museum, and the Thyssen-Bornemisza Museum, what's known as Madrid's Golden Triangle of Art. The location was extraordinary, the building was protected as industrial heritage, and the cultural foundation La Caixa, a prominent Spanish banking institution known for its cultural patronage, saw potential for creating a contemporary art center that could contribute to this museum district while offering free public programming. When Herzog de Meuron won the commission in 2001, they faced a fascinating set of constraints and opportunities. They had to preserve the historic brick shell, they needed to create a contemporary cultural institution with exhibition spaces, auditorium, offices, and public amenities. They had to address the site's awkward topography where the building sat uncomfortably at street level with the service station occupying valuable ground floor space. And they wanted to create something that would dialogue with the surrounding neoclassical museum architecture without mimicking it. The design solution they developed is nothing short of brilliant, and it begins with one of the most audacious architectural moves you'll ever see. They removed the base of the building. Let me explain this gesture because it's central to everything CaixaForum Madrid represents. The original power station sat heavily on the ground, surrounded at street level by a neighboring gas station and various service structures that cluttered the site and prevented meaningful public engagement with the building. Herzog de Meuron's radical move was to acquire the adjacent properties, demolish the gas station, and then, and this is where it gets wild, excavate beneath the historic power station, remove approximately 1 meter of its base, and insert a new structural system that would make the remaining brick structure appear to levitate above a recessed public plaza. The result is one of contemporary architecture's most photographed moments. A massive brick volume, weighing thousands of tons, hovering above street level with no visible means of support from certain angles, creating a covered plaza beneath that flows freely between street and interior. This floating effect isn't just a formal trick. It's a conceptual statement about lightness and mass, about making industrial heritage feel dynamic rather than static, and about generously giving space back to the city. The plaza beneath the floating mass becomes a true public space, a threshold between city and museum that invites people in whether they're planning to visit the exhibitions or not. And this gesture of urban generosity is fundamental to Herzog de Meuron's philosophy of civic architecture. Now let's talk about what happens above that floating base, because the treatment of the historic brick structure is equally sophisticated. Rather than preserving the original power station in its entirety, Herzog de Meuron selectively retained only the most significant brick facades, essentially treating them as a three-dimensional frame or wrapper for an entirely new building inserted within. They meticulously cleaned and restored the existing brickwork, but where new structure was needed, particularly at the top where they added 2 additional floors to accommodate program requirements, they departed entirely from mimicking the original. The addition crowns the brick base with a contemporary volume clad in oxidized cast iron panels, a material that references industrial heritage through its materiality and color, while being unmistakably modern in its application. These laser-cut cast iron panels feature intricate perforations based on patterns derived from historical Spanish decorative motifs, creating a facade that appears solid from a distance but reveals complexity up close, allowing filtered natural light into the interior spaces while providing solar shading. The dialogue between the rough, handmade quality of the 19th century brick and the precision-manufactured, digitally patterned cast iron is architecture as conversation between centuries, and it's this kind of material intelligence that defines Herzog de Meuron's work. The south facade facing the street received perhaps the most dramatic transformation, because this is where the vertical garden comes into play, and what a garden it is. The neighboring wall, a bland masonry party wall that was exposed after demolishing the gas station, became the canvas for Patrick Blanc's spectacular Jardin Vertical, a 24-meter-high living wall featuring over 15,000 plants from more than 250 species, creating a lush, impossible vertical landscape that completely transforms the urban experience of approaching CaixaForum. Blanc's system, which he's deployed worldwide, uses a sophisticated hydroponic felt substrate mounted on a metal frame, with plants rooted in the fabric and fed by a closed-loop irrigation system that recirculates water and nutrients. It's horticulture meeting high-tech, and against Madrid's typically arid urban context, this explosion of green feels almost surreal. The vertical garden serves multiple functions. It provides thermal insulation for the adjacent building, it creates habitat for urban wildlife, particularly insects and birds, it improves air quality in the immediate vicinity, and perhaps most importantly, it creates a memorable sense of place that distinguishes CaixaForum from every other cultural institution in the city. Visitors approaching the building encounter first this wall of living green, then the hovering brick mass above the shaded plaza, creating a sequence of spatial surprises that builds anticipation before you even enter the museum proper. Let's dive into the technical aspects, because making a building float requires serious structural gymnastics. The structural system that enables the levitation effect is essentially a massive steel framework hidden within the retained brick walls and the new cast iron volume above. After excavating beneath the building and removing the base, engineers inserted a series of concealed steel columns and beams that transfer the entire weight of the structure to carefully positioned foundations below the new sunken plaza. From certain vantage points, particularly the oblique views that have become iconic in photographs, these support elements disappear from view, creating that magical floating effect, while from other angles, you can perceive the structural logic, its architecture playing with perception and revealing its secrets simultaneously. The excavated space beneath the building isn't just an outdoor plaza. It's carved deeper into the earth to create below-grade spaces including the auditorium, which sits partially underground, insulated by earth and accessible via a sculptural staircase that descends from the plaza level. This vertical section through the building is extraordinarily sophisticated. You have exhibition spaces in the retained and expanded brick volume above ground, the threshold plaza at street level, and the auditorium carved into the earth below, creating a three-dimensional program distribution that maximizes usable space on a constrained urban site. The interior spaces are where Herzog de Meuron's minimalist sensibility really shines. Exhibition galleries feature white walls, polished concrete floors, and carefully controlled natural light filtered through the perforated cast iron facade, creating neutral spaces that allow art to breathe while maintaining a distinct architectural character. The circulation system is organized around a central sculptural staircase that winds through the building, connecting the various levels and creating visual connections between floors, encouraging visitors to explore vertically through the building and discover different exhibition spaces and programs. The material palette throughout is restrained and industrial. Exposed concrete, blackened steel, glass, and the ubiquitous oxidized cast iron that appears both on the exterior and in interior details, creating material continuity that ties the project together. One particularly clever detail is how the architects handled the transition between the historic brick and the new cast iron addition. Rather than trying to hide the joint or create a false continuity, they celebrated it as a clear datum line, making the architectural strategy legible and honest. The building's sustainability strategies, while not as flashy as the vertical garden, are integrated throughout. The thermal mass of the retained brick provides passive climate control. The perforated cast iron facade provides solar shading while admitting daylight. The underground spaces utilize earth coupling for thermal stability, and the vertical garden contributes to the building's thermal performance while requiring minimal maintenance due to its closed-loop irrigation system. CaixaForum Madrid opened to the public in February 2008, and its impact was immediate and profound because this project demonstrated several things that have since influenced cultural architecture worldwide. First, it proved that adaptive reuse doesn't require timid preservation or nostalgic reconstruction. You can honor industrial heritage while making bold contemporary interventions that create something entirely new. Second, it showed how cultural institutions can contribute to urban vitality not just through their programs, but through their physical generosity to the city, with that covered plaza beneath the floating mass becoming a genuine public gathering space used by locals and tourists alike, whether they're visiting the museum or simply seeking shade on a hot Madrid afternoon. Third, it demonstrated how architecture can create memorable Instagram-worthy moments, that floating brick mass, that cascading vertical garden, without resorting to empty spectacle, because these gestures are integrated into a coherent architectural concept rather than applied as superficial effects. The project also contributed to the ongoing transformation of the Paseo del Prado area, which was already Madrid's premier cultural district but needed activation and contemporary energy, and CaixaForum provided exactly that, attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors annually to its free exhibitions, concerts, lectures, and educational programs. The building has won numerous awards, including the 2008 International Architecture Award and widespread critical acclaim from architectural media, but perhaps more importantly, it's been embraced by Madrid's residents as a genuine cultural amenity and gathering place, which is the ultimate measure of success for civic architecture. The project's influence can be seen in subsequent adaptive reuse projects worldwide that have taken bolder approaches to intervening in historic structures, treating heritage buildings not as untouchable relics, but as palimpsests where new layers can be added that create productive tensions between old and new. From an architectural pedagogy perspective, CaixaForum Madrid is an invaluable case study because it synthesizes so many important lessons. The value of conceptual clarity, where a single strong idea, making the building float, organizes the entire project. The importance of material intelligence and craft, evident in every detail from the restored brickwork to the laser-cut cast iron panels. The power of section and three-dimensional thinking, using the vertical dimension to solve programmatic challenges on a constrained site. The potential of strategic demolition, where removing parts of a building can create more value than preserving everything. And the necessity of urban generosity, where successful civic buildings give something back to their cities rather than turning inward. There's also something poetic about how Herzog de Meuron approached this project. They took a building type, the power station, that was literally about generating energy, and transformed it into a cultural institution that generates a different kind of energy, the intellectual and creative energy that comes from encountering art and ideas, and they made that transformation legible through architectural language, with the floating gesture suggesting liberation from gravity and earthbound thinking, inviting us to see possibilities rather than constraints. The vertical garden, meanwhile, brings nature back into the dense urban fabric, creating an oasis that challenges our expectations of what cities should look like and reminding us that green space doesn't always have to be horizontal. It can climb walls and colonize vertical surfaces, bringing ecological benefits and beauty to unexpected places. If you visit CaixaForum Madrid today, 16 years after its opening, the building feels as fresh and relevant as it did when it opened, which is the hallmark of great architecture. It doesn't age because it's not chasing trends, it's exploring fundamental questions about materiality, structure, urbanism, and the role of cultural institutions in contemporary cities. Standing in that covered plaza, looking up at thousands of tons of brick hovering above you, you experience architecture not just as shelter or symbol, but as something that can genuinely surprise and delight, that can make you see the familiar, an old power station, in completely new ways. that can demonstrate through built form that constraints can be opportunities and that heritage doesn't mean stagnation. Herzog de Meuron didn't just renovate a building in Madrid. They created an architectural manifesto about adaptive reuse, about cultural architecture's relationship to the city, about the possibilities that emerge when technical virtuosity serves conceptual ambition, and about how architecture can honor the past while boldly asserting the present. CaixaForum Madrid stands as one of the most successful cultural projects of the 21st century, a building that works equally well as urban space, exhibition venue, and architectural experience, proving that when vision, craft, and cultural purpose align, architecture can elevate the everyday act of visiting a museum into something memorable and transformative. If this exploration of CaixaForum Madrid inspired you to look more deeply at how great architects transform existing buildings into something entirely new, subscribe to UrbArchitect, where we unpack the stories, strategies, and significance behind contemporary architecture's most innovative projects, because understanding how buildings like this get made makes us all better architects, better critics, and better citizens of our built environment.